Do you ever feel like evil is all around you? Like there are malevolent forces at work in the world that are beyond your understanding? Well, if you do, you're not alone. There are many people who feel the same way, and for many years. People in Chicago felt this way as they were stalked by a terrifying killer. In the early 1980s, Chicago was already a worn-down city. Crime and corruption were everywhere. So when people started going missing, no one thought much of it. After all, what's one more person missing in a city like Chicago? But slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Women were disappearing all over the city, and the police were no closer to finding out why. It turned out that a group of men known as the Chicago Ripper Crew were behind the killings. The men, Robin Gecht, Edward Spritzer, and brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokorais, formed a cult-like group that preyed on women in the city. But they weren't looking for money or power. They were looking for flesh. The leader of the group, Gecht, was obsessed with Satanism and mutilation. He kept a secret room in his house where red light bulbs glowed like an open wound and an altar sat waiting for a sacrifice. The men would hunt women at night. Sometimes prostitutes. Sometimes just young women walking home from work. The van would pull up beside them and the door would slide open, and before anyone could scream, they'd be dragged inside. Neighbors later told the police they often heard screams echoing in the alleyways, but in a city like Chicago, screams were just background noise. When the men were finally caught, the details of what they did to their victims emerged. Women were beaten, restrained, and subjected to horrific acts of mutilation. Gecht told his followers to carve into their bodies and collect their blood. They cut away chunks of flesh and took it back to the hidden room where they used it in grotesque ceremonies. The detectives who investigated the case later said they found a disturbing pattern. Women were disappearing in clusters, and their bodies were being left mutilated in fields or alleys. Some had their breasts cut off with surgical precision. The crew, it seemed, was feeding something dark, and the mutilations were trophies for their sick rituals. It wasn't until 1980 that the killings began to unravel. A woman named Beverly Washington survived after being picked up by the van. She described the men and the van to the police, giving them the lead they needed to make an arrest. The following year, the men were convicted. The trial revealed chilling testimony about the rituals, the altar, and Gecht's obsession with satanic worship. Detectives showed the court photographs of the crime scene, but they were so disturbing that the court ordered them not to be released to the public. So what happened to the men? Well, Gedekmes himself avoided the death penalty and is still in prison today. The others were sentenced to life or death, though some have since been released. To this day, survivors and families of victims describe it not just as murder, but as ritual sacrifice carried out in the heart of a major American city. And perhaps the most disturbing part of all, no one knows exactly how many women the crew killed.